We'll go ahead and start first with Larry Vaughts. Larry, go ahead.
Hey, Bruiser, could you just talk a little bit about what you might know, if anything, about the personnel you're going to be helping coach this year?
I know a few guys because I tried to recruit them. So Lance Ware, Isaiah Jackson, Keon, Terrence Clark. So I've watched them a little bit. I watched BJ Boston a little bit and a couple guys at AAU, but not closely. But those guys I tried to recruit a little bit. So I watched them pretty closely. So they're long, they're athletic, good skill level. So I know a little bit about them.
All right, next up we'll go with John Hale with the Courier-Journal.
Bruiser, obviously you have as much of a history with John Calipari as anybody. How have you seen Cal change over the years, back from when you first started together at UMass to now as you kind of reunite again?
I mean, a lot of things are the same. That's why he's had so much success. One thing about Cal is always open to changing and doing things differently, although he does things the same, if you can understand that. He stays with his principles, but I think he's not afraid to experiment with some of his basketball. But I think his principles stay the same. Honestly, he's a lot less crazy than he was back in those days at UMass. I know y'all think he's crazy at Kentucky now, but it's not even close in those UMass days. So I think he's calmed down some, to be honest with you. But I think the biggest thing about Cal is he's always stuck with his disciplines and how he wants to run things. But I think he's always been open up to how his team plays and how he wants to approach the basketball with the personnel he has.
All right, John Wong, we'll go next to you.
Hey, Bruiser. Dr. John Huang of NOLA Media Group and JustTheCats.com. Welcome to Lexington. The assistant basketball coach at the University of Kentucky has been described as the best job in America. It's got all the perks and very little pressure. How much pressure do you feel coming into a fan base that Coach Cal describes as not only wanting to win every single game, but winning every game by 20 points?
I think all assistant coaches, especially with social media, have pressure because they can talk about you. And they don't think you're getting any players for the coach, things like that. That comes out now. That wasn't the case years and years ago when I got into coaching. But, there's always pressure. And one of the biggest pressures is to bring in players. You know what I mean? The better your players are, the better your coach is. So I know that myself. I was a head coach for 20 years, so I get that part of it. And not only that, too, like I said, you're at UK and people talk about you. They put you on social media and ask, what are they doing? Those are the types of things that go on now that probably didn't go on when I first got into coaching. But that's part of the game now, and you got to deal with it.
All right, Ken Spencer with WHS. We'll go next to you, and then we'll go to Eric Decker and then Chandler Wilcox. Go ahead, Ken.
Bruiser, you had a really good job at Indiana with Archie Miller. How did you have to take some time to think about this decision, or when somebody like Cal calls you, was it kind of a no-brainer to come on board?
Well, I don't know if you know about the relationship. So, to be honest with you, when I called Arch and told him, I said, he just laughed because actually they went through Cal to sort of get me to come and work for Archie. So everybody knows the relationship. And honestly, I just wanted to make sure that our relationship can stay the same before I came to work for him. I want us to have a good relationship. We're best of friends, and I appreciate that relationship. And I don't want that to be messed up because I would come work for him. And we discussed that a little bit. And so that made me a lot more comfortable. I didn't have to leave Indiana. It's a good job. But I wanted to keep the relationship we have. But we talk all the time anyway. So it was one of those things that we're on the phone with each other almost every day, even though I worked at Indiana. So, but that was a big thing. Arch know the deal. He knows my relationship with the Millers is through Cal. So that it was nothing to be said, actually.
All right, Dick.
So welcome to Lexington. I hope you're staying safe. So I kind of have two questions here. So you have people like Cal and Coach Bill Bano backing you up, saying stuff like whether you're within the university or not, you're going to love him, or stuff saying that you could recruit anyone because of your no bullshit approach and just the goodness in you. So I just wanted to ask, what directly do you want to have as an impact on the recruiting side of the game rather than on court? And secondly, you've always been known with your toughness and work with front court men, and Kentucky has always been able to seemingly regurgitate all NBA guards. Is there any sort of position you want to focus on the recruiting side, or just trying to find the best talent out there?
Just trying to find the best talent out there and the people who fit into the program, the people who can play for Cal, people who can take the pressure of being in Kentucky. So I think that's the most important thing right there. In terms of position, every year I was a head coach, my point guard was all league. So I think I've done a pretty good job with guards, and I've had a pretty good job with big guys. So in terms of teaching, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter the position. It's all about just helping the guys get better and feel confident and that they're going to be better and feel more confident in game type of situations. So it's all about the teaching and having guys get into good habits and things like that. But like I know one of my chief jobs was the same thing at Indiana was, help the coach get good players that fit into your system and fit into your program. So that's the bottom line with it. If you can do that, then you'll be an asset.
All right, Chandler Wilcox, we're going to you next, and then Howard Herman, we'll go with you after that.
Hey, Bruiser, I was just wondering, going back to Kentucky, Indiana, do you have any interest in trying to get the regular season series revamped?
You sound like these guys I walk by when I come back to Indiana every morning, and they get on me about, you're going to get the series back together again. So when am I supposed to say that? I mean, I think that's above me at this point in time. But we've talked about it, believe me. I talked about it a lot with Dwayne when he was there, and Scott Dolson, who's now the AD at Indiana. But I mean, like I said, I would hope so. I mean, but that's not something that I don't think that's part of my job description. I'll put it to you that way.
All right, Howard, we'll turn to you next.
Hey, Brew, how you doing?
All right.
Hey, when John left for the Nets and you took over at UMass, and I know college basketball is really a crazy world, could you have ever in a million years imagined that you guys would be working together again?
No, that's 30 years ago. So that's a long time.
And we were kids then.
Yeah, it's a long time to be apart. So, no, I never thought I'd work for him again. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think I'd be an assistant coach again. But, things change. And I've been fortunate to be able to not only just to come to Kentucky, but go to Indiana, then to Kentucky, to big-time programs and two of the better basketball programs in the country. So, and honestly, it's been a blessing because it's family, not just Cal, but Tony, Robes, you know what I mean? Even Joel Justice, his teams played against my teams at Drexel when he was at UNCW. So it's family. And everybody says, well, how's the transition going to be? It's going to be easy because, I'm going back to be with guys I've been with for a long time.
John Hale looks like you raised your hand again. Go ahead.
Bruiser, a few years ago, Cal made some headlines about how little he likes the grad transfer rule because of what happened with you and Damian Lee at Drexel. I'm curious, having experienced it from the mid-major side to now recruiting at Indiana and Kentucky, where they've had a lot of grad transfers the last couple of years, how has your feelings on that rule evolved, if it has, and how do you kind of see that now?
I still don't like it, but you got to do your job. I mean, I get it. But I don't like it, but, in the end, the kid wants to leave and go where he wants to go, and he's good enough, you got to recruit him. So I think it's become part of the job now. You got to know who the grad transfers are, who they want to, where they want to go. And I think, my kid was one of the first ones, impact players. Now I think everybody knows that's part of it now. So I think they accept it a little bit more. And you're a little bit more prepared. Everybody asked me about the situation. They said, what happened? I wasn't prepared for it because it wasn't a big deal at that point in time. And when a kid walks in your office and say, hey, I'm leaving to be eligible to play somewhere else, at that point in time when it happened, I don't think a lot of coaches are prepared. I think a lot of coaches are a little bit more prepared for this situation if it was to come up now. And they prepare themselves for it in terms of their own recruiting, where back then you really weren't ready for that.
All All right, next up, we'll go with Brian Kennedy with WTVQ. Go ahead, Brian.
Hey, you kind of hit on a little bit there, Coach, but what is that transition like? I mean, you were a head coach for a long time. You have ultimate control, and now you go to assistant where it's a little bit different. How have you, struggled or kind of embraced that role, and how will you embrace it at Kentucky as well?
No, I actually thought after Drexel, I sat out for a year, and I actually thought that was a big part of it. I thought I got myself together to be able to go and possibly, and I actually interviewed for a couple of head coaching jobs, but I didn't get them. But I think I prepared myself to be an assistant coach. I thought one of the things that Arch would do was he would bounce some things off me that he may not have done with the other guys on the staff because of the experience. And hopefully the same thing. But Tony's been a head coach. Robes has been a head coach. I think it gives you a different perspective. I think sometimes you're a little bit more patient because you understand what goes on. But you got to go and do your job. And whatever Kyle needs me to do, and I'll be able to do it. But I think that year sitting out, I think the transition would have been hard for me if I would have went right from being a head coach to an assistant. But I think that year sitting out gave me a little bit of time to sort of reflect and prepare myself to what the changes might be able to that may be coming towards me.
All right, guys, we're going to go back to Larry Vaught, and just a reminder, if you do have a question, to use that raise hand feature. Go ahead, Larry.
Bruiser, could you just talk a little bit about maybe what was John's sales pitch to you when he reached out to you? And do you really believe he's going to be as open-minded to your suggestions when you're actually on the bench with him as what he said?
I'll be honest with you. I tell people this all the time. Sometimes when you're a head coach, you don't want to hear from the assistants. So I've experienced that. Okay, be quiet. Let me coach my team. So I get that. You know what I mean? And you should get that if you were a former head coach because you've been through that. So I don't think it was a sales pitch. I know Kentucky basketball. I've been around it. And not only like I said, it was just going back to family. This thing happened pretty quickly. And like I said, we've been talking about it anyway, but I don't know if he really thought Kenny was going to go. But so then he said, if this goes up, man, I want you to really think about this. So I was like, okay. But it wasn't a lot to it. It wasn't a lot to thinking about it. But I get the whole thing with the head coaches. I've done it in my career. Just let me do this. This is my team. So let me do it. And I'll start listening to y'all when I want to. But at times you do that as a head coach. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
All right, Howard, coming back to you.
Okay, when you were back at Drexel, you had a chance to play against Cal in Kentucky. What do you remember from that game, and how tough was it to play your mentor?
It wasn't tough to play him because they gave us a lot of money. But I will say this, they beat us by like 50. And I must have got 30 phone calls. I thought that was your boy. He's not supposed to beat you like that on the game was on national television. But I knew we were in trouble because that was for the 2000th win, if I'm not mistaken. So it was for the 2000th win. So I'm in the hotel getting dressed. It's like 5 o'clock. I think the game was at 7. And like the building was 3/4 full. And I was like, oh, brother, it's going to be one of those nights. This is not going to be one of those regular guarantee games. And they had a kid on his team. I can't remember his name. He was shooting like 8% from the 3-point line. And he made his first 3 threes to start the game. And I knew that. I knew we were in trouble at that point. But, that's what happens sometimes. That's what happens.
I will go with Keith Farmer. Go ahead, Keith.
Hey, Bruiser. Just curious, you mentioned, Kentucky and know the program, but I'm curious, just what your first recollection was growing up, maybe just whatever hit you first on a memory of, Kentucky and remembering them first time you saw them.
Probably my first time watching Kentucky was Gene Banks is from my neighborhood. He played at Duke. And he's from my neighborhood and watching Kentucky play Duke in the national championship game. I think that's probably one of my first real recollections of really watching them. I know, Sam Bowie, Pennsylvania guy. So you watch those guys, but they always had great teams, great tradition. So, but I would probably say that team there was probably the first team that I really watched and started paying a little bit more attention. And Bowie came through, and Clarence Tillman, who was Actually, even another Philadelphia player who played at Kentucky, I think, for a year or two. So you follow him a little bit. But those were probably late 70s. In the 70s, mid late 70s. That's when I started, really paying attention to Kentucky.
Looks like we got another question from Eric Decker, and then Derek Terry. I'll come to you.
Hey, Coach. So obviously it's much different this time around coming through with Cal, and then throughout your career going to all these different Drexel and then Indiana, where greatness is expected, but not necessarily in the same way as in Kentucky, where basically I'm just asking, how excited are you to come to a spot that winning is something that's more expected rather than celebrated?
I'll be honest with you, they expect winning at Indiana. No. So I get that, but this is the monster that you've built. I mean, Cal has put that in everybody's head because of what he's done here. So they expect you to win because he's treated the job that way. He's built that program to the point where everybody expects you to win. And I know you have great tradition, but he's done it. So expectations are there because he made it that way. If it wasn't, then people wouldn't think about it the same way. But his resume since he's been here is incredible, and so the expectations are going to go with it. So I have no problem with it. You know what I mean? That's part of the program, and you got to learn. You have to approach the job that way.
All right, next up we got Derek Terry with the Cat's Paws.
Hey, Bruiser, with you coming on board and potentially some other moves being made on the coaching staff, I think someone posted that Cal has been re-energized by this. You said you still talk to him about it every day, even when you were at Indiana. So is that the sense that you get from him as well, that he is re-energized for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think, Cal's always re-energized, one, because he always has a new team. So I think that re-energizes you a little bit. You always got new players, new kids always coming in. That re-energizes you. So you guys know you cover them. So the energy level is always there. But change is always, something different. I think that one of the reasons, maybe that's not the case, you can ask him himself, is that he's bringing somebody in he already knows. So I think he's more comfortable with it, that you're not bringing somebody in that you don't have a really, really good relationship with. So hopefully that's the thing that he talks about, with being re-energized with the new staff, that, I'm a person that's known him. He's been a mentor of mine, and that I'm just going to slide in, and we're going to try to do what he's been doing since he's been here.
All right, Keith Taylor with Kentucky Today. You're up.
Coach, you coached at Indiana before coming here, and that's a traditional program like Kentucky. How much has that helped you prepare for this type of job?
I think the recruiting, I'd never really recruited. We did, I think I've always done a pretty good recruiting, but it's a little bit different when you move up the levels, and you get used to the fans. The fans can be a little bit crazy at these places. So I think that's probably was the biggest adjustment there was, one, I hadn't been an assistant for 20 years, and then, the recruiting becomes a little bit different that way, and recruiting at this level becomes a little bit different. So that was an adjustment I sort of had to make. And then you realize the pressure that the fans put on you to win. I think that's probably one of the biggest things right there.
Jeff Drummond, we'll go with you next.
Hey, Bruiser, you mentioned earlier that Cal, I think, wasn't as crazy as he used to be, maybe back in the old days. Can you share one of your favorite crazy Cal?
That's a long time ago, man. You see him go up and down the court all the time. But he just was way more energetic. He's a little bit. He sits down a little bit. He never sat down at UMass. He was up the whole time, and he was bending his knees, and suits a little bit more expensive than they were back then. So he tries to not keep them as wrinkly. But he, especially in practice too. I watch him in practice. He's a lot more patient than he was back then. You didn't have all these rules, and we practiced for like 5-6 hours. So, or we would come back and we would have 4 or 5 practices a day. So you're not allowed to do that anymore. And I watch him a little bit, even before I came on, watching practice. He's a lot more patient with the guys. So I will say that's probably the biggest thing.
Guys, we got time for a few more questions if you got them. I don't have anything currently in the queue, but I'll give you a minute or two if you want to ask a couple more, Brew. Anybody else? Looks like Larry's got a question. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, you talked about that you tried to recruit, Terrence Clark, and a little bit about his game. Could you just talk a little bit about his game?
Big guard. I mean, big guard, can do a little bit of everything. Unbelievable versatility. Shoots it, puts it on the floor, can almost play the point. I mean, that's one of the reasons why he was ranked as high as he was. I mean, in terms of versatility, there wasn't many as good as him in the country. And you saw it, and you watched him. He could do a little bit of everything. So when I look at him, I just say his versatility and what he can do on the floor. I'm sort of old school though. I'm a guy that believes that it's a little different level, so you got to prove it. But in terms of his talent, I think his talent is as good as you're going to get.
We'll go back to John Hale. Go ahead, John.
Along that same line, Bruiser, Keon Brooks was obviously a guy that Indiana prioritized too a couple years ago. He's Kentucky's only returning player who had any experience last year. What did you like about him in the recruiting process, and just makeup wise, how big can he be as a leader for this team?
One, great kid. So, I mean, in recruiting him, he is one of the nicest kids you'll ever be around. Thought he had unbelievable work ethic. And Cal was talked about, because I used to always ask about him, not just to Cal, but to Tony and the other guys on the staff, how's Keon doing? Because, we did recruit him pretty hard. And, I don't think he'll have a problem, taking up a leadership role just because of the type of kid he is and how hard he works. And I think he wants it. I think that's the most important thing right there. So I'm looking forward. His mom and his dad hit me up when they heard I was coming. They talked about how excited they were having it, and they enjoyed when we tried to recruit him at Indiana. And then when I saw him, I wasn't able to really be down there with him, but he threw the ball up and hit the thing like to say, yo, I'm here. So he's a great kid, and I'm sure he's going to have a good year. Calvin said he really worked hard, and looking forward to coaching him this year.